He probably should have had some camouflage on there, not just a giant white bald head. My name's Sergeant First Class Stephen Mason. I'm the senior jungle instructor for Jungle Operation Training Course at Lightning Academy in the 25th Infantry Division. I've currently been the senior instructor for 2+ years out there, and I specialize in tracking and survival. Today we're going to be going over some jungle warfare movies to determine whether or not they're real. This movie is ridiculous. Because that guy has the inability to talk just because he's being pulled into something. He's like, oh. I would say that the only time that would ever happen is never. Camouflage top would be better. He would have been leaving dinosaur-sized tracks. So a lot of people, when they think about tracking, they just think about like a footprint on the ground. But that's actually one of the last things we look for. Everything is so thick that you're actually leaving most of your imprints from like your knee to your shoulder, and that's where you're kind of maneuvering around and bending leaves and turning leaves and leaving scratches. So, I mean, he would have done a significant amount of that kind of stuff walking in and out of there. We teach a lot about water sources and the way to move about them and use them to your advantage. I don't know that we teach coming out of the water and shooting people with a bow and arrow that makes noise. So we like to use waterways to traverse them. So instead of having to walk through, like just for example, that jungle in the background, that would be very taxing on the body if you had to walk, a significant amount of distance through that, where we just teach you to get in that waterway and move until you think you can get out again and start walking like they're doing. But I would never say that there's a scenario where you'd have to like hide in the water. So if I was Rambo in this situation, I would probably be in the rocks where he was, and that way if they do start shooting, you at least have cover. But once they come to you, then that's it. That's game over. I've been put in situations in the jungle where they give you, a couple days or a week worth of classroom environment, and then they load you up in the back of a truck and they drop you off in the jungle by yourself, and you have nothing besides a knife and a machete for the next 10 to 14 days. Survival isn't what people think it is whenever they watch like Bear Grylls. Like he's excellent at it, but he had to have gotten to that point. You just can't go into the woods and be like, I'm going to survive and then crush it. I'm going to say a 2 out of 10, 10 out of 10 for awesome.
Is this a double feature? For God's sake, just lean your head back and open your mouth.
It's pretty outdated. I mean, we all chuckle through all of them, but when stuff actually hits the fan, your brain reverts back to like, oh my gosh, I saw this stupid video and that might save my life. So we do teach how to collect rainwater in different types of leaves or bamboos. If you were to just tilt your head back and open your mouth, you wouldn't get enough water to do anything. So everyone talks about like the rule of 3. So you can go 3 minutes without air, 3 days without water, 3 weeks without food. But that's the good thing about the jungle. There's water everywhere. There's a lot of vines inside of jungles that just are filled with water for that tree. And if you can find those, just cut that in half and you have a couple quarts of water. But the rule of thumb for soldiers is a quart of water an hour if you're under a heavy workload.
Your best friend is your knife.
Oh, look at knives getting serious.
A knife is absolutely the most important tool. And knives are used for everything from, building your shelter with it, just using it to sharpen things, to slash things, to cut things. It has to be durable. That's why we talk about full tang blades, meaning that like the knife is the full length of the handle instead of just being the blade and then a little bit goes into the handle, because you need to be able to like put that into trees and then bang a rock on it to split wood. It just needs to be used for everything. Even though it's right above you, you probably would forget about security and running back into the woods till it actually was time to get, picked up. And at this point, he's just trying to live. He did exactly what we teach soldiers to do. If you need to get found in a jungle environment, you'd find a big open area and try to create something that's larger than yourself so that you could be signaled. You could light a fire and then put a lot of green leaves on it. It'll create a big plume of white smoke. That's a jungle penetrator. We actually use that here at jungle school. Same technology from Vietnam we're still using today because it's effective.
Authenticator! What's your authenticator? Rescue dog! Louder! Rescue dog! Favorite sport!
That's very realistic. So whenever you deploy, you have to fill out some forms, and there's a sequence of questions that you have to answer in case this scenario does happen. You even have to put like where your tattoos are on your body, and so when you do get caught, they're making sure they're picking up the right person and not someone they don't want to be picking up. That's the thing about the jungle, is that it can start breaking you down physically within 24 hours, and you can look like this within a week. And it all depends on your skill set and how long you can survive. Like me, I think I could survive pretty much indefinitely. I would say that the last scene, that's probably a 10 out of 10.
No.
This is my absolute favorite jungle scene in any movie that's ever been produced, because this sums up what it's like to be in the jungle 1000%. You were just wet and miserable, and you're wondering the entire time why you made this life choice. Oliver Stone, the guy that made this movie, he was actually in the 25th Infantry and deployed with them to Vietnam. It's usually pretty dark inside there. I've been in a lot of jungles where you can't even see your hand in front of your face during night operations. Kind of looks like, they have a spotlight on top of them. You just have to be good at being uncomfortable. There's no trick to that trade. So actually, the 25th, we're the first ones to field the new jungle uniforms, so a little bit lighter weight that dry out faster. We have jungle boots that dry out quicker.
Junior. Hey.
I'm going to be up scanning for every little movement or sound I can. So that keeps me up, and I think that just the fear of everything that's crawling around on the ground while you're down there on it also keeps you up. 50% of everything is trying to kill you, whether it be the plant life or animal. In Vietnam, they have like 15 different poisonous snakes, double that in poisonous spiders, and then they have tarantulas. So yeah, you're just constantly on the lookout for what you don't want to step on, sleep on, or grab. And another thing is there's only one person up on guard on this patrol, and would never happen. So in Vietnam, the average firefight was within 5 to 10 meters. So the enemy was able to get very close to us, but we were also able to get very close to the enemy. Stealth in the jungle is paramount to probably anything else. You actually use the same things today as you did back then. So technology has advanced a lot. So the jungle really doesn't give you that capability because satellites can't penetrate through it. The night vision can't get through there because I was talking about how it's dark. So night vision actually needs ambient light to work. So you need a little bit of light to make night vision work. So when you get shot, if you're still in that type of environment and you haven't won the battle yet, you have to figure out kind of how to deal with the pain, like you said, so that you're not giving away your position, because you don't know if the enemy has left the area yet. Actually, a lot of people, when they get hit, they don't even realize they get hit because their adrenaline's just pumping and they're just so ready for it. And then someone actually has to tell them, like, hey, man, you got shot? I've personally seen that, absolutely. I would give this a 10 out of 10 just because this reminds me of every squad I've ever been in. He probably should have had some camouflage on there, not just a giant white bald head.
Keep your eye on the package. Roger that. Holding.
What was accurate about this is that they put a guy, a sniper up top, who was kind of like their topside security overwatch, who was watching the scenario unfold, who had comms with them, who could say, like, hey, the situation has changed, don't go in. The fact that you have to get all the way up to the village very stealthily and then try to work your way in one building at a time, that's pretty accurate. If you were going to go do something like that, an operation like that, you would be camoed head to toe, but also them using suppressors, that's pretty accurate. You would use hand and arm signals a lot, moving around the jungle. A lot of them is just kind of like the, halt, stop, keep moving, standard stuff, these, stuff like that. That's about it. Using rally points and pointing places, saying, like, hey, this is something significant. You're gonna have communication on you, but so they have this cool guy stuff with an earpiece. They even have stuff that just like throat mic, so you can just press on your throat and you can whisper, and it still comes across on the other end just as loud. So yeah, everything's pretty accurate other than the face paint. I would give this a 9 out of 10. As soon as they made contact, they immediately rolled into the ditch and then returned fire. They got behind the nearest cover and then started returning fire. What was funny is that they were just walking kind of in a straight line across this open danger area, which wouldn't have happened. You could have done another number of methods. You could have bounded across it, or you could have, we call it hand railing, where you just kind of like stay on the wood line and go through, and then that way, you know, you wouldn't have been give it grid, doesn't tell them where is that, just says tree line. You're in the woods and someone's like, we're in the tree line, let's go. Control the entire situation. At no point, unless it's like worst case scenario, should the leader of the entire patrol be picking people up and running with them. He should be delegating those tasks and then, you know, relaying all the information to higher and giving out guidance. I would give this a 6 out of 10. After you've been in there a while, you can start to tell, you know, the weight of a tiger isn't the weight of a human, so you'll be able to distinguish the two. Plus, a tiger knows how to step, and a human doesn't. Any snap or crack you hear, you're going to automatically be on high alert, especially if you think the enemy's in the area. If I had a minigun in the jungle, I would be doing that with it. So that's about as accurate as this scene. Someone might have an M16 and they're just blasting off rounds, and it's just coming out as fast as the trigger can go, and they would never do a magazine change, and he'll be in this firefight for like 20 minutes. Yeah, some of the weaponry was correct, but you would definitely not be lugging around this Gatling gun in the middle of the jungle. Those rounds that he had, for the amount of firepower that he put down, that'd have been like hundreds of pounds. So the goal is to be as light as you can for the longest period that you can. You need to be very like aerodynamic and nimble. I would rate this a 2 out of 10, but a 10 out of 10 for awesome. This movie is based on one of the battalions here in the 25th. It's based off 127 Infantry, the Wolfhounds, from their Charlie company. And this is when they had to be deployed to Guadalcanal. This is the type of terrain you'd see when you're coming out of a jungle and getting into the kind of like the mountainous terrain where it's just like a bunch of overgrown grass. But they're trying to do a frontal assault up a hill, which was dumb in the first place. Probably wouldn't have happened. Not really sure why he had a grenade taped to his belt. Yeah, normally you won't be able to just pull the pin itself and the grenade still be on your body. The distance was right, the scenario was right, just the way that it was executed probably wouldn't happen in real life.
I blew my butt up! I blew my butt up!
This is a pretty realistic war movie. I mean, even all the way down to the way that soldiers act whenever someone gets hurt, it's still just a bunch of guys trying to figure it out. I would give the scene a 7 out of 10 for realism.
I want you to get me all the air support you can get me on that now.
That was pretty convenient that they had 2 helicopters and an airplane on station within like a second of the phone call going out or the radio transmission, and they didn't even like have the grid out yet. They were like still talking and they were starting to shoot. So the reason that they're using helicopters, and we decided to use helicopters during Vietnam, is because one of the only methods to truly infill and exfil from that type of environment is to find that one little clearing and then try to get as many troops rallied at the same point so that you can push from there. The Vietnamese clearly knew that that was going to be a point that they would try to infill, and then they were dug into the side of the jungle mountain and then just decided to fight down from there. Everything is pretty accurate. As soon as they hit the ground, they just started running to the nearest cover, which was pretty far away because they got dropped in the middle of a large field. This is based off a real event. This Colonel Hal Moore in the 1st Cav. So when a helicopter is coming down, the entire body is spinning, and then they're kind of like oscillating all around, so you don't even know really where it's going to land, so you just don't even, you hope that you would just run in the right direction. But as far as being in that helicopter, that's just kind of hold on and hope for the best. I would give this a 10 out of 10 because I can visualize what it would have been like to be in this scenario, and I just feel bad for everyone that had to go through this. Without a sight on it, and that's not the correct way that you do it. And time of flight would have been like the same as just a regular bullet, the way a mortar works. So it has to come out, go in the air, and then come down and hit. That's not happening, but that wouldn't happen. This little tank running around the battlefield, somebody would have probably already tried to take it. That's pretty accurate to what it is like to see a tank get shot by another tank. We had Shermans on shore at Guadalcanal, and they were just trying to reinforce the infantry. But that's kind of the role of a tank in this situation, is just to try to flush out, all the larger targets so the ground forces can continue to push forward. But actually, at this stage of the war, tanks weren't on ground yet because we just had tanks. That's also super accurate. All the weapons are pretty spot on. The equipment was spot on. They're shooting Thompsons, which is accurate for officers, and the officer in this scene has a Thompson. This is a good scene other than the mortar. I would also rate this a 7 out of 10.
Have the Chief designer sunglasses.
You sure that's him?
This looks like a Kodak camera zoom. I'm not sure what that is.
He's moving.
You're always going to have a spotter, and then you're going to have a sniper, and then they're going to be talking back and forth about, distance and wind correction. So he just said, 2 people go walk down a hill. I'm not really sure why he did that, especially since 5 seconds ago they were talking to each other in normal voices, giving each other corrections, and then now they decide that they want to be stealthy and walk away. You never want to give up on stealth just because of distance. First things I tell people about the jungle, especially at nighttime, it's almost so loud that it's unbearable. So the first night I spent inside of a jungle, this bird hadn't made this sound all day, and I didn't know what it was. But at nighttime, I still don't even know what type of bird it was. It just sounded like this man that was just like being stabbed or something. It was just like this, and I was like, what is happening? And then all the other animals start feeding off that, and it's deafening how loud the jungle is. I would give this a 7 out of 10. The biggest thing that movies get wrong about the jungle is how long it actually takes to maneuver from one location to the next. You might watch a movie and it's like they're just walking for days across the jungle. Depending on the type of environment, you might only move a football field's length, 100 meters.